One of the more controversial takes of the 2024 NFL draft cycle has been the idea that Ohio State wide receiver Marvin Harrison Jr. could somehow not be the first wide receiver selected. Now, with all due respect to Washington wide receiver Rome Odunze, the primary competition comes in the form of speedy LSU wide receiver Malik Nabers, who put up some bonkers numbers last season alongside Heisman Trophy winner Jaden Daniels. This brings us to today's question. Is Nabers, or anyone else for that matter, really deserving to even be mentioned in the same breath as Marvin Harrison Jr., or does society need to chill the hell out with prospect fatigue and learn to appreciate the greatness of the latest stud Ohio State product? Let's find out. First up, Marvin Harrison Jr., the reigning Biletnikoff Award winner for the nation's best collegiate wide receiver, who, reminder, beat Malik Nabers by 1 full vote. And yeah, Nabers was not too happy about that. Tough to really blame him. Anyways, it's tough to believe nowadays given the last name and all the collegiate production, but Marvin Harrison Jr. wasn't exactly the most renowned recruit coming out of Pennsylvania. Don't get it twisted, this guy didn't come out of nowhere, but at the end of the day, he was just a 4-star recruit and ultimately was outside the 2021 class's top 10 wide receivers. Seriously, Troy Franklin, Brian Thomas Jr., and Malik Nabers himself actually were rated higher by 24/7 Sports coming out of high school. Madness. Of course, didn't take very long for Maserati Marv, shout out Gus Johnson, to prove that he belonged in the conversation as the next great Ohio State wide receiver. I mean, my goodness, the dude's first extended action in the Rose Bowl against Utah, he managed to score not 1, not 2, but 3 touchdowns, and that simply set the stage for what wound up being a massive 2022 alongside CJ Stroud, and arguably an even more impressive 2023 alongside Kyle Honda McCord. And by more impressive, I'm not just talking about the obvious disparity in skill between CJ Stroud and Kyle McCord, I'm also talking about the attention that opposing defenses were paying to Harrison on a weekly basis. Per reception perception, awesome stuff from Matt Harmon as always, you guys should definitely check it out. Harrison Jr. was double covered on a whopping 16.8% of his sampled routes last season. That's the highest mark in reception perception history. Despite this, again, he put up big time numbers and saved some of his finest performances for his stiffest tests. Elite body control is what really stands out as Marvin Harrison Jr.'s trump card when watching the old film, but honestly, it's unfair to even try to name 1 or 2 things as his pros because, my God, the guy is the complete package. Listen to what Yahoo.com's Nate Tice had to say about him in his awesome breakdown. Harrison Jr. has so much more to his game than simply dunking on smaller opponents. His pedigree of being the son of one of the most refined route runners of all time shows up on every Ohio State passing play. His overall polish, despite weighing 209 pounds and standing at just under 6'4", is what starts to crystallize the more you watch him, whether it's on All 22 or the TV copy. Every aspect of his game oozes off the screen, from the route tempo and clean footwork, to the feints on route stems that keep cornerbacks off balance, to his bend and body control to sink and stay tight on his route breaks, to even his varied releases. Like an elite pass rusher, he can alter between speed and power when going against press or man coverage. Throw in some objectively awesome physical tools and a reportedly even better work ethic, and Harrison Jr. truly paints the picture of a can't-miss prospect. Honestly, I think the only actual negative we can speak of is his yards after the catch ability. No, I'm not trying to say that Harrison Jr. can't break a tackle or make a man miss after the catch. That said, compared to Malik Nabers and Rome Odunze, his missed tackles force numbers left a bit to be desired, and overall, relative to other day 1 and day 2 wide receivers, we simply didn't see the same level of excellence with the football in his hands. Does this lone con mean that Harrison Jr. shouldn't be the 2024 NFL Draft's #1 wide receiver? Of course not. But it is a fair critique and the primary basis for why some smart minds do in fact prefer the LSU product instead. The comps on hand are littered with future Hall of Famers, from a smaller Marvin Harrison Sr. to Larry Fitzgerald and my personal favorite, AJ Green. It's not surprising that Marvin Harrison Jr. broke Dwayne McFarland's rookie wide receiver supermodel over at FantasyLife.com. But with all that said, it doesn't necessarily mean that Malik Nabers couldn't be a better prospect. As NFL.com's Lance Zierlein puts it, Nabers is the next big thing coming out of LSU's receiver room, with the pure explosiveness and talent to be mentioned in the same breath as former LSU stars starring in the league today. Seriously, this run of talent LSU has had in the last decade, absolutely phenomenal. Yes, Ja'Marr Chase and Justin Jefferson are currently doing their thing at the highest levels right now, but throwing Odell Beckham Jr. and Jarvis Landry from some of those past teams, and LSU truly has a pretty good argument as being this decade's wide receiver U. Lofty praise for sure, but that said, look at the numbers. Men lie, women lie, numbers don't lie, and you do not need more than one hand to count the number of wide receivers who are more productive than Nabers over the past 2 seasons. Accordingly, Fantasy Life's Matthew Friedman has Nabers going off the board to the New York Giants with the 6th overall pick in his latest Fantasy Life mock draft. And this is where I get so confused with a lot of the pushback that Nabers can't even be mentioned in the same breath as Harrison Jr. Because yes, while many do in fact prefer Marv, I'm yet to see a mock draft with the guy separated by more than a few picks in the first place. And the primary reason why Nabers continues to be ranked so closely to Marvin Harrison Jr., hot, nasty, badass speed. This feature pops off the tape in all facets of Nabers' game, and accordingly, he led all of college football with 34 catches of at least 20 yards in 2023. Just listen to the way PFF put it in their ever fantastic 2024 NFL Draft Guide. Nabers' movement skills are rare even at the NFL level. His ability to change direction yet continue to accelerate makes him an open target specialist in the slot and on the outside. He has the kind of athleticism that demands a defense to know where he is at all times as a future wide receiver 1. Now, after watching said tape, I will point out that, my God, guys, some of these double moves absolutely mesmerizing out there. And lest we forget, if you do happen to land Malik Nabers on your fantasy football team next fall or beyond, you have a pretty awesome nickname waiting for you there. The Neighbors think I'm selling dope. Sorry if I'm just way too white to be pulling off that pun. Really did seem to hit a lot better on Twitter. Regardless, Malik Nabers, absolute rock star with the football in his hands, and he has the sort of speed to make pursuit angles look silly and to put the ever-living fear of God into defensive backs of all shapes and sizes. And unlike Marvin Harrison Jr., we were able to quantify this quite a bit easier after Nabers posted a 4.35 40-yard dash and a breathtaking 42-inch vertical at LSU's Pro Day. The primary con for Nabers comes down to the fact that he spent more of his snaps in college in the slot than on the outside. Now, I think if you pull up the film, you're going to see this was not a slot merchant whose life was made abundantly easy for him throughout his time at LSU, but at the same time, he is a little bit smaller than both Marvin Harrison Jr. and Rome Odunze, and we are forced to wonder if he'll be able to hand up on the outside against more physical corners at the NFL level. Overall, we've seen comps range from the aforementioned LSU stars Ja'Marr Chase and Justin Jefferson to current Bears wide receiver 1 DJ Moore. Now, I try to avoid going with such high-end comps for guys, so bear with me for a second. I'm going with if Kadarius Toney highlights were truly an every week thing, and I truly mean that as a compliment, particularly pre-2023. I mean, that was pretty messed up, Kadarius. So, now that we've broken down the boatload of pros and at least one con for both Marvin Harrison Jr. and Malik Nabers, what is the verdict? Do they really belong in the same conversation? I think they do, guys. But hey, you don't even have to take my word for it. Why not listen to the most plugged in and knowledgeable NFL draft minds that we as a society have at the moment? From Adam Schefter to Dane Brugler to Daniel Jeremiah to Lance Zerloin, we have loads of sources who I really believe are not simply being paid off by an agent telling us that multiple NFL teams do in fact prefer Nabers over Harrison. Fantasy Life's Dwayne McFarland concluded his, again, fantastic rookie wide receiver supermodel with a similar conclusion, noting that these two are far closer than many want to believe. Again, Marvin Harrison Jr. is Dwayne's number 1 highest ranked wide receiver since 2018, but Malik Nabers, number 3. Ultimately, I am giving Marvin Harrison Jr. the 1A nod in Fantasyland, but that's honestly primarily because it seems like a matter of if not when either the Arizona Cardinals or Los Angeles Chargers acquire his services. Those are two teams with proven franchise quarterbacks and a dire need for a number 1 wide receiver. I don't think you guys need me to explain to you why Nabers ending up on the New York Giants maybe wouldn't be best for his fantasy upside in at least 2024. Ultimately, both are absolute studs, and the only man I would take ahead of either in Superflex formats in Dynasty Land is USC quarterback Caleb Williams. So yeah, that's my conversation on the topic, guys. And before you simply call me a hater, I'm a Columbus, Ohio lifer, okay? I have every reason to favor Marvin Harrison Jr., and I am sometimes bleeding that scarlet and gray as I'm trying to watch this stuff, but truly, pull up that Nabers film, watch a couple games before you go ahead and just say there's no chance of it being in the same tier, and I think you'll start seeing what at least some of us are also trying to preach out here on the old YouTube streets. But anyway, that's it from me. Thank you again, guys, for tuning in. Like and subscribe if you want or not. It's a free country, but most of all, have a great rest of your day.